Sex Talk.
Hey, Mo. Can you get this thing
Hi,
back?
Melissa. Happy Friday.
Yes, happy Friday.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm actually feeling really good today.
Awesome. Well, I'm so excited to have you on the Sex Talk today. I have been wanting to bring you on this episode for a long time because I really want to talk about non-monogamy. So on my Sex Talk series, for anyone watching who doesn't know, I have a YouTube channel and it's called the Sex Talk series, and you can get to it by just going to thesextalkseries.com. I do talk a lot about non-monogamy, and a few years ago, a friend of mine said to me, well, you know, Mo, you deal with all that white stuff, you know, like, and we were talking about, like, I don't know, some aspect of non-monogamy. And she's like, you know, she just kind of like blew it off as like, well, you know, you're always doing, you know, that's the white thing, you know. And I was like, oh my God, is it? You know, of course, you know, I'm like, gosh, you know, am I like aping the white majority? So it's so refreshing to meet people of color that, you know, are fans of non-monogamy, that engage in it, that are curious about it. So I wanted to bring you on and have you talk about non-monogamy for people of color, because that's your specialty.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I wouldn't say it's my specialty for people of color, but it just is, right? Because that's what I am, and so it just naturally is that. But yes, I'm so excited because I know that's one thing that we have in common is that we're always talking about non-monogamy. You know, we're always like, yeah, non-monogamy, that's the answer. Just keep it simple. So we have that in common. And I remember, actually, you shared that story with me. I remember first meeting you and you had shared that with me. I think I had mentioned that, like I used that phrase, right? And you know, I used to be kind of nervous to say that out loud. You know, fear of like how it would make other people feel or whatnot. But I really just leaned into it because that was what was coming up for me, you know, and not just around non-monogamy. I know that even like at one point I was trying to like facilitate like cuddle parties and stuff like that. And I had so much inner conflict about it. It was something I was so like I felt so excited to do, but there was this just like this voice in my head of like nobody's gonna show up to that shit. Like
Right.
nobody, you know what I mean? And by nobody I just meant like my network, my people, my circle of friends, you know. I was like, they're not gonna show up to that. Like, but you know.
And when you're talking about that, maybe you can tell the audience what it is. Like you run groups, right? For people, like they're like support groups for non-monogamous people.
Yeah, so I mean, so right now, yes, I run support group, a non-clinical support group for I'm actually called it a community circle for non-monogamy, but everyone is welcome, so it's not just non-monogamy, but of course, the space is centered around non-monogamy, and the space is centered around experiences for people of color, for Black and Brown experiences, because I think they're unique. And I think it's important for us to, you know, to have that space to kind of be able to openly share, you know, to share those experiences. So yeah.
Awesome.
Well, story, but
no, that's perfect. So for our audience watching, what would you say? And hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I'm super excited to have Melissa LeSane today talking to us about non-monogamy. What would you say to someone who is like, what's the most important thing for someone who is new to non-monogamy to sort of wrap their brain around if they're interested in it, or if they or maybe one of their partner wants it and they're kind of getting, you know, maybe not pressure, but they're curious about it. What would you say to them?
I guess I would just start with, I always get asked this question. Every time I'm asked this question, some reason it's like I have all the answers at once and none of the answers at all. So
right. I know it's a loaded question and there's not one answer.
It is, but I think you actually kind of led me into the direction that I probably would have went anyway, of like having, you used the word curiosity, right? And I think I think that is such a great place to start, where we can just kind of be curious about it. Because I think sometimes just that word, just that label, non-monogamy,
Mm-hmm.
brings up so much feelings in people, brings up so much feelings in us. And it just feels overwhelming sometimes and really scary and really triggering. And so I think leaning into that and just being curious about what does that even mean, like why, what are these feelings that are kind of coming up in me?
Mm-hmm.
I think that will kind of guide you into a path of your own to where you want to explore,
Yeah.
I mean, just like being open about it. And I think that's just kind of the biggest part of allowing our minds, even just our minds, aside from talking about it, finding, actionable steps or whatnot, just like allowing our minds to even go there,
Right. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said your own. Like non-monogamy you get to decide what is your journey into non-monogamy, and you get to negotiate rules and guidelines with your partner or partners or by yourself if you're a solo,
Right.
and there's no one way to do it. I think there's so many avenues for it. And I think that's the scariest thing. I often tell my clients, well, you don't even have to use the label non-monogamy, because a lot of couples are monogamous, or
Mm-hmm.
as Dan Savage calls it, monogamish,
Mm-hmm.
where they're sort of doing monogamy, but they have like agreements that they have with their partner,
Right.
around it. So, I think the label in and of itself can be scary for
It
people.
can. Yeah, it can be scary. And I think it prevents us from seeing, like, sorry, I'm not sure what's happening right here. My plug is for some reason not working, so maybe I should
Oh,
take
you're
care of
fine.
that at some point.
It just went black for a second, but it's fine.
Okay. Um, but what was I gonna say? I think that word sometimes, or words like that, kind of labels like that, limit us from seeing, like, that parts of non-monogamy, like, we're already living it, like they already exist in our experiences, and so it's not
So true.
necessarily so out there and foreign and, like, oh my gosh, crazy, like. And I'm trying to think of an example in my head right now, but I don't know, can you think of one, like, just time, I mean, maybe like,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes,
go
I
ahead.
think like polyamory, for example, is having like emotional intimacy. And we have emotional intimacy with a variety of people in our lives
Exactly.
already. We just
Hmm.
don't label it as polyamorous. And so I
Right.
think that it's kind of like shifting our mindset a little bit to see it as our ability to love a numerous of people. Yes, you might be in a monogamous relationship where, like, oh yes, we're husband and wife, but I've got this best friend, and I go golfing with this partner who we share these
Hmm.
types of information. It's just like you have different relationships, so we're already sort of experiencing our capability of loving infinitely, I guess, right?
Yes, yes. That's the part I'm so excited about, that I feel so passionate about. I mean, my, clearly Shades of Non-Monogamy is the page name, is the business name. And I talk about non-monogamy and I center that and I use those words, but ultimately, like, I'm so excited about just expanding ideas about intimacy, just about
Yeah.
connection, about
Yeah.
relationships in general.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know and then, yes, and then highlighting also that, the romantic elements of it, because I think that's another thing too, is like, it's so, like, anytime now you throw in sex into anything, or
Hmm.
eroticism or something, it's just like a whole nother layer,
Right. Right.
now it's taboo, and now it's scary, now it's like all of these
Right.
things,
Right.
flags and all that.
Right, right. Yes. We're very comfortable as a society to have numerous friends, but like throw in the word sex, everyone's like, oh my gosh, we can't be doing that. Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, what kind of challenges do you think? Because you mentioned this actually first when you first started, you said there are specific like challenges that brown and black people face that are kind of unique to us. What would you say some of those are in your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think, simply said, it's the same challenges that we're talking about on a daily basis, every single day right now, in just general. So, I mean, representation is a huge one. I know that was, like, really big for me. I remember, I mean, I can go not way back, but I can go way back to just, you know, I feel like I got a lot of my sex education from what is it, like Real Sex on HBO.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's better than a lot of stories I've heard about where people got their education.
Yeah, so Real Sex was like the place, and Dr. Ruth probably too was the person who I was watching a lot as well.
Ruth,
but you know, a lot of the people on there, I mean, they didn't look like me, and you know, so there was a part of that felt so like other, that felt so like, that's that thing that they do or whatever, you know, because nobody I know does that. Like, so that's and then all the way up until like when I was before I started grad school, you know, and I remember searching on YouTube for like looking for stories, looking for real stories of people in non-monogamous relationships. And at that time, and that was only what, maybe 5 years ago or something like that. At that time, there was probably like a handful of people that I found that were sharing their stories. You know, people of color. Even that. Yeah, it probably wasn't even that. And I'm so excited that now you can type that in. There's so many more stories, and so many more people, Black and brown people, sharing their stories. And I mean, so that's just one example, you know, representation and just feeling like, I mean, I just think that all of the, you know, the cultural stuff, that I mean, the gamut of cultural, you know, narratives and rules and all that stuff that kind of come along with that. But
do you find that you actually, this was a question that another sex therapist that we know had posted the other day. Do you prefer to hang around with like specifically only Black and brown poly people, or do you prefer to hang around, like, you know, who do you prefer to like hang around when you explore and experiment with your non-monogamous self?
Yeah. I mean, I guess if I'm honest, you know, it does feel good. It does feel good to explore and be around people, Black and brown people, people who look like me, people who I feel I can just naturally and easily connect with. And, you know, it does feel safe. It does feel safer. It feels more inviting, you know, but ultimately I enjoy and I love to hang around and be around and explore with lots of people, with everyone. So I wouldn't say it's like, oh, that's what I want, that's my preference, but I do acknowledge that it is a different experience, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And so when it comes to non-monogamy, what is your, like, how did you get into it? What was your, if you don't mind talking about it, like what inspires you about non-monogamy personally?
Personally, okay. Personally and generally about non-monogamy. I think I've always kind of just been a rebel. I mean, I have this narrative, this story that I tell about myself, my younger self, that I was like a rebel, you know, I was kind of like rebellious, should I say. And that I was, I think, in touch with my sexuality, intimacy, and just kind of like my inner self very early on, which I think most of us are actually, you know, and I don't know, actually, it just happened. Like, it just was. And I think what ended up happening was when I met my husband, he had language that I didn't have, you know, and this non-monogamy term. And then also he was very aware of the swinging community. And so that's kind of how I think it bubbled from there. Whereas I was like, oh, wow, there's a name for it. There's a thing, you know, there's like space, there's community, there's people. Like, this is not just, you know, random fun.
Oh, true. Like, I think that's such an important thing. I think that so many people feel like there are only one options, and that is being single, and that is being in a couple. Like that, and once you're in a couple, it's monogamous, and then the only way I can do anything is if I cheat. And I honestly, I've
had those experiences too, for sure.
Yeah. And sometimes maybe it is easier to cheat. I've had clients tell me that it is easier to cheat because it's being non-monogamous, ethically non-monogamous, requires a little bit of work, in the sense that like you have to come face to face with jealousy, insecurity, inadequacies. And I think that like one thing that people don't recognize about non-monogamy is we're not saying that you can't be jealous. We're not saying that you can't be insecure. We are saying that here's this other option, and it does require a lot more communication with your partners, and it can be transformative if you embark on it, in the sense that like we have the capacity to love so many people, and when we force ourselves into this like narrow lifestyle, these narrow boxes, we do ourselves a disservice, and we do our partners a disservice.
I'm going to take this opportunity to plug in my charger. Can you hear me? Oh, I'm going to take this opportunity to plug in my charger real quick. Give me 1 second. I don't want it to die.
Yeah. So I'll just talk to the audience and say, like, I think non-monogamy can be transformative. Like, we don't have to, this idea that non-monogamy is for promiscuous people, I think, is something that comes across for me a lot as a problem, in the sense that like we can do it in an ethical way. We can do it in a way that our partners feel safe, that we feel safe. We can do, someone wrote, haha, a little bit of work. That's an understatement. Exactly. It is work. And so, people always say, I remember I did a workshop on it once, and one of the main questions was like, who has time? Like, who has time to be non-monogamous? And I'm like, that's the thing. It's like, we have the capacity to love, but do we have the time that relationships require, to be non-monogamous? Right?
Yeah. But, also, like, I remember, I'm going to kind of use an example. I don't know if it's going to fit completely, but I remember when I was going through this inner conflict of, do I want to be a therapist or not? And I was in grad school, and it was so hard. I knew grad school was going to be a challenge. I knew we were going to talk about, ourselves and learn about ourselves, but I didn't know really how much I was going to have to face about myself.
Right.
And I remember there was this moment where I just wanted to give up. I was like, there's no way that I can see clients. Like, I'm going to constantly be triggered. Like, and my husband said something that I was profound to me at the time. And he was just like, that shit's not going away. Like, you're going to have to deal with that anyway. You know what I mean? Like, whether it's a client or whether it's whatever, like, your family's not going anywhere, your friends, like, these situations, this feeling that you're having is not going to go anywhere, so why not go through this, through this route where you feel supported, where, there's understanding here, where you have the opportunity to lean into it, and I guess I see that the same way. And like, I mean, it's hard either way. Even if it's monogamous, like, that's just hard. It's probably harder. I mean, in my mind, it's harder.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. And I think that like we're going to have uncomfortable moments, whether we're monogamous or not. Right. And so I think that like, if you can find the support around being non-monogamous, and that's something that feels and resonates with you, it's an option. It's something that you can explore. Right.
Exactly. And thank goodness for it. Because I mean, going back to my personal story, if I would not, I think I feel like sexuality in general and relationships, and that's why I'm so passionate about it, have been like my vehicle in terms of exploring myself, getting to know myself, facing those unresolved things, expanding and exploring, finding my voice, like so many things, just opportunities for growth and healing and just living and pleasure. Right. And
right.
I think, I don't know what my life would be like. I'm curious, what my life would be like without this, and what life would be like having met my husband, or met, say, a husband back then, who might not have been open to me continuing to explore. I wasn't really sure what my sexuality was about then. I knew I was still curious. I was curious about women. I was like, I want to explore this part about myself. Like, I love flirting, and and it felt so good to be welcome and to be like, okay, like that's not a bad thing, and
Right.
you
Right.
can explore that.
And it is really scary for a lot of people. I want to just acknowledge that because, you know, I've certainly been in relationships and I have lots of friends who are like, you know, like their eyes get like, what? How the heck do you do that? I think one fear that comes up for people is, oh my gosh, my partner's gonna leave me if I allow them to have these other experiences. And I just tell people, like, we're so conditioned to be monogamous, we just think that, like, if we open this door, that it's just gonna be this, like, everything's gonna fall apart. And
Yeah.
there's no reason that you have to, like, open the door wide open.
Right.
You know, just my partner always says, even having conversations about non-monogamy supports monogamy. You know, just like the fact that you have a partner that you can talk to about it can actually support your feelings of safety in that relationship and not make you feel like, oh, my partner doesn't understand me. Like, when we feel supported and understood, that actually makes monogamy easier, right?
Right. Yeah,
If,
absolutely.
you know, if you're too scared to do it, just talk about it. It's just a conversation, is what I often, you know, tell people.
Yeah, monogamy, I mean, it does support monogamy, and I think it just supports us, you know, as a whole, holistically, as a person. I know that, you know, again, this was the vehicle to, you know, find my voice. I say that I'm, you know, I was so nervous, you know, I was so nervous to be on here, to be talking about these things.
Right.
This was new to me, being on social media and speaking out loud, and
Right.
you know, but look at this, like I'm doing it, and non-monogamy has been created so many opportunities for me, you know, to just
To share, to educate.
to educate, yeah, all that stuff.
So I often tell people this too. It's not, non-monogamy is less about exploration and more about transformation.
I like that.
Because I think a lot of people think, like, you know, like I always go back to this assumption that it's about promiscuity and wanting more sex. And it's not. It's more about learning that you can love infinitely. You can love so many different people in different ways, and you can get all of your different needs met by different people, as opposed to this fairy tale idea that one person is going to fulfill all of your needs and fulfill all of your fantasies, because they never do. And then it sets us up for disappointment. And so when you sort of start cracking that door open, it can be such a transformative experience for people,
Yeah.
you know, to explore and stuff.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say before we wrap things up?
No, just anybody who's interested in finding a, you know, a circle of people who, you know, can welcome all your feelings and experiences, send me a DM, and I'd be happy to share that with you.
Yeah. So where can people find you, Melissa?
Yeah. So you can find me on shades _ non-monogamy. And
Shades of non-monogamy with underscores in between.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
your
always trying to find, like, what's the best way to say that.
That's great. I like it. It's like 50 Shades of
50 Shades.
50 Shades
Yeah.
of non-monogamy. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So many. Well, yeah. So it's actually, so the like the behind the story about that is, like, yes, it's the shades of non-monogamy, and it's also shades of, like, shades of people, shades of color, shades of, you know, experiences. So yeah.
Right. I love it. I love it. And you're running a group, and that is, when is that group?
Yeah,
meet?
so the group meets every Wednesday, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and on Zoom. And so you have to register. The link is in my bio, and then you'll get the information from that. But yeah, that's what I have going on, and, you know, just come hop on.
And you're a therapist too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
So
a
she's
too.
also available for therapy as
Definitely.
well as coaching around non-monogamy.
Yes, and that is my specialty in therapy. That's like my favorite. I love working with, you know, couples and mores and individuals around non-monogamy. It's so much fun. So yeah.
Awesome.
Come
And
chat with me.
I'll certainly put Melissa's links down below. And of course, you can watch my Sex Talk series at thesextalkseries.com. And I do have a playlist on there with, I think there's like almost 40 videos about non-monogamy as well. So
yeah, playlist is anything. You have like, yeah, you have so much on there. I love it. Sex Talk. If you have not gone on there already, you need to. You're missing out. So much
Thank you. Thank you so much, Melissa. Thank you so much for coming on today. And everybody email Melissa or DM her if she's okay with that.
Yeah, send me smoke signals, whatever. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Just connect with me.
Awesome. Well, have a great weekend, Melissa. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Mo. See ya.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
The Sex Talk.